In the last episode, I bought a fake Porsche 911. Underneath, it was just a 44 horsepower Beetle. And after some fiddling, I managed to get it to run. And then I took it for its first drive in decades. And I have to say, it was actually pretty wicked. Things were going very well, until the headlight fell out and smashed.
No.
But other than that, it was a huge success. And I have to say, I love this little thing.
It is very loud in here, and it sounds very like a Beetle.
So in today's episode, we're going to dive deeper and see what is lurking beneath, and start building a solid base for an RWB conversion. So, let's do this.
Hello, and welcome back to Hudson Auto Films. And today, we are back with my 100% genuine, fake Porsche 911. That's better. Okay, so we are back working on the 911-ish. If you didn't catch the first episode in this series, this is a Covin 911. It is a perfect replica, of a Porsche 930 Turbo, and it is a bizarre beast. In the last episode on the 911, I got this thing to run after many years. It's been semi-abandoned for decades. In fact, it's not been on the road since 2001, so 25 years. It's not been on the road almost since the time I was born, which is crazy. Unlike a lot of fiberglass cars, which are basically one massive slab of fiberglass, this breaks down into its component pieces, which is going to be very important because if everything checks out underneath this, then we're going to wide body this thing and go quite a distance with this project. So here is the plan of action. We are going to take the wings off, we're going to take the bumpers off, bonnet, boot, all of that sort of thing, and see what is lurking beneath. And already I can see a huge amount of filler, so it's not looking good. Then we're going to strip out the interior and get the first proper look at the floor pan, the chassis, and see how bad the rust is. And these chassis rust like mad. Then, providing things aren't too terrible, we can begin the restoration process. We can grind off all the rust on the floor pan, get everything treated, we can start prepping the tub and getting this chassis and body ready for its next stage, which of course is crazy wide body, all of that sort of ludicrous stuff. So, a very exciting episode, potentially a very daunting episode. I really hope this isn't too bad. But when is that ever the case with the cars I buy? So, let's start stripping this thing down.
Now, I bought this car a few months ago. I bought it sight unseen, and since it's arrived, I've not touched it at all. I've not looked underneath it, I've not gone around it, and until last week's episode, I hadn't delved into the engine. I had no idea if it was even wired up or anything. So the fact it ran was a pleasant surprise. I've been holding off starting on this until we were in the sort of final 20% of the Nova build, and as you can see in the top right hand corner, the Nova is still very much being worked on. It's looking very different from when you last saw it. But this final 20% on the Nova takes just as long as the first 80%, and it's a very different sort of process. It's a lot less visual. For example, I spent the whole of last week working on the Nova, and it was very intricate work, and it amounted to about 2 minutes of footage. So I'm really hoping the 911 will keep me busy and keep you guys entertained between Nova episodes, which will be every couple of weeks as opposed to every week. I'm also hoping the 911 will offer us a very different selection of jobs to work through and for you guys to watch. But the big risk is I don't know how rusty this thing is going to be. And if it is as rusty as the Nova, then we've got another massive, complex build on our hands. But we shall see. Anyway, 6 bolts and 6 wood screws later, the bumper was off, and obviously 4 bolts later, the bonnet was off. And right now, all we can see is fiberglass. And even though the fiberglass itself is solid, it is covered in all sorts of paint, filler, and nastiness, which is not a good sign. But next up, it is the side skirts. Now, this is possibly the worst part of the whole car visually. Now, every other part is an original pull from a 911, but someone has put these rather ugly side skirts on, which look horrendous, and I'm desperate to get them off. But there is about 3 screws holding it in and a huge amount of mastic. And mastic is a problem. It's very good at holding things on, but when you have to remove it, it can cause quite a lot of damage. So I'm carefully chiseling it away, separating it from the body, which obviously we need to keep in good condition. And after some careful chiselling and a good old yank, it was off. And what was lurking beneath was our original sill, which looked pretty good except for the rear section, which had been rather horrendously cut out to allow for the horrendous vent in our horrendous side skirts. But we could deal with that. It's just fiberglass at the end of the day. But with one side skirt down, there was one more to go. We were side skirt free, and even though this looks very rough, somehow to me it still looks better. Taking off those horrible skirts and revealing what should have been there is a nice feeling. But next we are onto the wings. And by now you guys know the drill. We have a few wood screws and then there is a bunch of bolts underneath the arch which connect it to the tub. Now in theory all the bolts were undone, but this is the part that concerned me the most. We had a big line of filler going down the edge of the wing on the gusset. Now this is where things can get very ugly quickly. We needed to pull the wing off without damaging the fiberglass, so I was trying my best just to separate the filler from the tub and hope we could pull it without causing too much damage. But even with the bolts undone and the filler seemingly separated, the wing was still very solidly on the car. So I worked my way up the inside of the wing and found, you guessed it, more wood screws. So I carefully went up, removed them, and hoped there was not more hiding under filler. With everything seemingly removed, it was still solidly on. But then I found another selection of wood screws that had been fiberglassed over in the corner of the wing. Once removing those, it allowed me to pull the wing up and find another bolt that had been fiberglassed over. Now it's moving well, and the only thing holding on is filler. And quite a lot of it. So I just had to carefully peel back and try and not damage the wing or the tub. And with a bang,
yes,
she was off.
Oh, wow.
And thankfully, somehow the wing was off without causing any damage to it or the tub. But as you can see now, this was held on with a lot of mastic, filler, screws, bolts, just anything they could chuck at it. Now, this is the sort of thing that gives kit cars and fiberglass cars a bad name, because this method is pretty common, but they can be built much better, and this will be built much better. And now, knowing what I was up against, it was time to remove the other side. Mission success. Now, even though that was a delicate job and quite a daunting one, we had removed everything without causing any damage, which was very surprising, but very good, and it bodes well for the rest of this build. But now we can actually see the tub. And yes, it is very crusty, but it is solid, which is what matters, and there's no damage. This does feel like a good moment to compliment the Covin yet again. Even though it needs a lot of work, I do find this kit very impressive. They have gone to extra lengths and it is just very well made and thought out.
Okay, so we are making some ground. The whole front end is off, the side skirts are off, and it's looking quite a different beast. When you're dismantling something like this, it's never particularly simple in the sense that there's how it should have been put together and how it has been put together. And this is a good example of that. This has had a huge amount of mastic and filler to make everything stick together. Now, it didn't need that. It has plenty of bolts here, but someone decided to put a huge amount of mastic and make it sort of all glued together. And obviously that means with the removal, it's tricky because you don't want any fiberglass to snap or catch and crack, all that sort of thing. So it was a bit of a delicate act, but same with the fiberglass as the front wings. Once I'd done one side, I sort of had a better approach for the next side. And all in all, everything came off without any damage. There was a little bit of damage here where someone had obviously got that sort of P38, whatever it's called, the fiberglass pre-mixed and everything, and they'd sort of rammed a load in to sort of wedge it together, and that caused a tiny bit of damage here, but on the whole, everything is fine, which is a relief. When I started messing around with the front wing, I sort of felt like this is a point of no return, because if it doesn't go back together or things start to break, then this suddenly becomes a much bigger project than I want it to be. The goal with this car is not to go to the same extent as the Nova. We're not completely nut and bolt taking this thing apart. This is more of a refresh and modify, I suppose. But aside from the choices that the original builder or whoever has modified this along the way has made with the mastic and all that sort of thing, the Coven itself, I'm just becoming more and more impressed with how it's constructed. It is really well made. The front tub is really impressive. You know, for a fiberglass kit car, everything has been thought out very well. But again, the bane of these things is you just don't know who's got to it. It's not the intention of the original designer that messes these up often, it's the people who have fucked around with them. But obviously a huge amount of cleanup to be done in the tub and sort of all the surrounding areas. But yeah, everything has gone pretty well so far. So next up, let's finish this exterior strip down, go around to the back, take the bumper off, take the wing off, and then it's interior time. Before we go any further, today's episode has been sponsored by Autodoc. When you need car parts, searching can be overwhelming, but Autodoc's search is designed specifically for cars, so it's easy to find the parts that fit your vehicle. No random results, just the right parts right away. It's faster, more accurate, and is built for people who want to get stuff done. But what is particularly cool, and as we all know, is some parts are very hard to find, but not with Autodoc. Whether you're fixing up an older model or looking for something very specific, there's a very good chance Autodoc will have it. And for that extra security, if you order the wrong part, Autodoc makes returns simple. If something doesn't fit or you change your mind, sending it back is quick and easy. No complicated steps, no stress, just a return policy that actually works. As you all know, the Nova build has been particularly challenging, and a big part of that has been sourcing parts for the Alpha Sud engine, and the only place we could find what we needed was Autodoc.
Let me show you how easy it is. You simply select the make and model of your car, and as you can see, they even have old school stuff like Alpha Suds. Then you select the category and then bam, you have parts. And with the tap of a button, it is in your basket. Then if you want to search for something more specific, you can do that also. In my case, I want to look for some gaskets. These are particularly hard to get hold of, but as you can see, Autodoc have them. Even the intake gaskets, which we've gone through already. Then once you're happy, you can head over to your basket, check you've got everything that you need, scroll to the bottom and put in my code HAF for a 5% discount, and then you're away.
I've just ordered some more really hard to find parts for our Alpha powered Nova, which I'll be showing you in the next episode. Autodoc makes things simple, not to mention they also have regular sales and discounts through the app. So what are you waiting for? Please do go and download the Autodoc app now. I've linked it in the description, and remember to use my discount code HAF for 5% off. If it wasn't for Autodoc, we wouldn't have been able to find some of these particularly unusual parts for the Nova, so do check them out, and a huge thank you to Autodoc for making today's episode possible.
Okay, so we are getting there. Now the rear end should be a lot easier than the front end because the bumper is just held on by about 6 bolts and then the wing is held on by just 4 bolts. So this shouldn't be too bad. And just like that, with the iconic whale tail off, the Coven was now stripped. I'm leaving the boot on because next up we're going to give this thing a little bit of a wash, but also the boot will remain, even with our wide body. So everything that we need to get off for now is off. And it is quite the selection of parts, quite the selection of fiberglass. A quick side note that I just find quite interesting is all the areas on the car that would have been rubber, for example on the bumpers, a portion of the door, on the whale tail, it's all just painted on. It's actually just fiberglass and they've just painted it black to look like rubber, which is quite funny. But anyway, moving on. Now the exterior is largely stripped, it is time to focus on the interior. Now, stripping the exterior has not really shown us anything concerning, but it's also not shown us any metal. But by stripping the interior, we'll get the first proper look at the floor pan, which really dictates the rest of this build. If it is rusty, then this might have to be a body off build, but I'm hoping it is solid, so we don't have to separate the body and the chassis. And now, with both the seats out, we can get the first proper look at the floor. Now, all of the floor is covered in sound deadening and all sorts, so it's quite hard to gauge it. But of the metal we can see, there's certainly a lot of surface rust, but no holes yet. But let's continue, get the rear seats out, and then start stripping some of this nasty, nasty sound deadening. The interior was now stripped, not that there was very much to remove. There's a few sections that I'm leaving in, like the rear quarter trim, as it's in really good condition, but if I pull it out, it's all glued on, it would just get ruined. But now we have to tackle all of this sound deadening. Now, often sound deadening can trap water underneath and just make rust a whole lot worse, incubate it if you like. So now we need to strip it all off and hope that underneath there is a floor being held together by more than just the sound deadening. I used a combination of heat and scraping and pulling. Now this stuff was nasty, it was sort of like an old style bitumen sound deadening, so it was very sticky, and even though it was coming off, it was leaving a lot of residue. It was just really nasty stuff. Now weighing a lot less, we could get the first proper look at the floor. There is a lot of surface rust, but nothing immediately horrible. But how it would react to a wire wheel is another question. The only sort of issue I see is there is a little bit of pinholing around this earthing point, but that's not bad. But time for the other side. And yet again, it was a similar story. It wasn't too bad. Yes, a lot of surface rust and crust, but no holes. And that's really what I care about right now. There was again a tiny bit of pinholing just in one corner, but that was it. Could it be that I've bought a car that isn't completely buggered? Surely not. But we shall find out. Next up, I just want to give the whole thing a very good clean up, inside and outside, just to get on top of it all. Then we can remove the fuel tank and inspect the head section and the front axle area. Then if everything checks out, we can begin cleaning up this rust. Now all the rust and dust and crust was hoovered out, it was time to give this thing a little wash. Now this wash won't be satisfying, let me tell you, because the car has no paint on it and I don't have a pressure washer here, so this is just really going to be getting off any grime and just, you know, make it a little bit better. Not to mention the hose doesn't stretch very far. So anyway, what it's about to entail is the most unsatisfying wash you've ever seen on YouTube. And after a little bath, it was looking marginally better. Marginally being the key word. But it was all progress. Now, the next thing to do is let it bake in the sun, as I need the floor pans to be as dry as possible, and we did get some water inside, as when we wire wheel it, it is easier, obviously, if it's dry, not to sort of make swirls of rust juice everywhere. So whilst it's baking, I'm going to remove the fuel tank. And arguably this is an even more daunting and important moment than removing the interior. Underneath the fuel tank is the head section, which holds on the front beam. And if you remember on the Nova, the head section had completely deteriorated. We had to chop it off and put a new one on. So if this is rotten, then it means the body has to come off, which again turns this into a much bigger build than what I want it to be right now. And after loosening the tabs, the fuel section was out. So I just had to remove the fuel line, and then it was the moment of truth. Miraculously, the fuel tank wasn't rusted through, which has happened on all of my other Beetle-based machines. And whilst I was at it, I decided to remove our slightly dodgy fuel line that we hacked together in the last episode, because obviously this would need to be replaced. I was also trying to distract myself from looking at the head section. And after letting it bake for a little while, it was time to pull it inside, and then it was the moment of truth. Would the head be rusty? And to answer that question, I'm not sure. There's certainly a lot of surface rust and rust grime everywhere, but underneath it, would there be holes? So time to get the Hoover out again and hope for the best. Well, there is a God above. Underneath all of that rust, dust and crust, it was solid. Yes, lots of surface rust, but there was no holes and the metal was still very thick and strong. This is fantastic news. Even though this whole thing needs so much work and love, it's a solid base. It's not rotten. And most importantly, we do not have to take the body off. We can deal with all of this with the body on. And that is exactly what we're going to do next. Now, that gizmo I just waved around is a laser cleaner, which was sent to me. Now, in theory, this should burn all the rust off and give us a clean surface to paint over. So I'm going to test it out and see how it performs and go from there. And after a first hit, it had cleaned up a lot of areas, and thankfully it hadn't revealed any holes. But there was a lot of rubber bushes that were in good condition that I didn't want to melt through. Not to mention I couldn't really get the laser into certain areas, and I didn't want to burn any fiberglass and burn this whole thing to the ground. So I decided I'd go back to old reliable, the wire wheel. So I got the car up in the air and took the wheels off, and then we could get full access to the suspension and to the head section. Now, I want to give a quick disclaimer here. Now, I know that this is a solid base. I don't want to rip this into a million pieces and create a massive project, which will ultimately slow the Nova down. This is meant to support everything going on and give me some variety, give you guys some variety. So my plan is just to knock everything back, knock all the surface rust off, and give us a nice clean surface to treat. Now, of course, everything is better if it's bare metal. but you've got to remember that this car has sat neglected for many, many years and it is still rock solid. And moving forward, once the surface rust is knocked off, treated and painted, it's not going to have a hard life. It's not going to be driving through salt. It's going to be stored inside and driven and taken care of. So I don't feel bad about this. And something I've learned over the last couple of years is it's very important to determine what a car build is meant to be and what it's not meant to be. With the Nova, it was completely rotten and we had no choice but to strip it into every single component part and rebuild. But as you all know, it's been a hugely intense project, and of course it'd be lovely to strip every single car down into a million pieces, but it would then take me the rest of my life to put them back together, and ultimately I really want to drive some of these cars. And in reality, this 911 is solid. It doesn't actually need to be stripped into a million pieces. Once everything has been cleaned up and treated, it will last decades. Anyway, that's my piece, that's my plan. Now the suspension is nicely cleaned up from surface rust, it's time to attack the head section yet again. And to do that, I need to remove this sort of guard panel. It's been screwed in and the screws are completely seized. So I'm just using a flat disc and getting them flat so I can pull it off and then just get full access to all areas in the head section. And now with some headroom, it's time to go over this front end one more time, get it nice and clean, and then we can move on to the floor pans. The front end was now cleaned up, and even after quite an aggressive wire wheeling, no holes had showed themselves, which is great. So that is ready for treatment. Now it's floor pan time. Now, even though these are rust free, it's always quite scary hitting it with an aggressive wire brush because it can open holes up. But amazingly, there were no holes in sight. And with both floor pans now cleaned up and getting my seal of approval, I wanted to rewrap some of the cables that ran through the cabin, as some of the insulation was a little bit tired. With the wires rewrapped, it was almost time to start painting, but I wanted to address this dent in the floor, which clearly had happened by someone jacking it from the floor pan, which is never a good idea. And well, I know the exact tool for the job.
Nice.
And with a freshly restored floor pan, I gave it one last clean out. And I was really pleased with how it had ended up. I know some of you may see this and still see a rusty floor pan, but this is just sort of a rust haze. It is very solid. It is just sort of a light taint on the surface. It is now clean, and it is time to treat this rust and protect it for many years to come. Now, the treatment in question is Hammerite Direct to Rust metal paint. Now, I know everybody's got their preference, but this is mine. I do also like Por 15, but it is so expensive and we've got a lot of ground to cover. I've used Hammerite for years and had great experiences, so I'm sticking with it. So let's take the metal back to black. And after a lot of painting and sweeping up previous parts of the car, it was looking pretty damn good. The mechanical underpinnings of the 911 were now looking much, much better and were protected for many years to come. Now, it is worth noting I painted a lot of areas that aren't going to be staying on the car, which is why I've been quite liberal. The drums aren't staying, the shocks aren't staying, and a lot of the rubber parts are being replaced. But for my own OCD, I couldn't bear just to leave them looking nasty. I wanted everything to look nice and uniform, even if they were coming off. The floor pan had also come up great. Obviously this is all going to be covered again with sound deadening and carpet, but it is nice to know that underneath it is protected. It was now a funny sight seeing the chassis look so nice and the rest of the car look so horrible. And I know what you guys are also thinking. The underside of the car, that's not been touched. And nor has the rear suspension. Well, all the rear suspension is going to be replaced very soon, and the underside of the car, I really need a lift to get proper access. But it is a similar story. It's solid, but just lots of surface rust. The key difference is the head section and the top of the floor pans are soon to be covered again, so they needed to be dealt with first, but we can still get to those other areas later in this build. But there we go. This 911 has come a long way in this episode. It may not seem like it, but its future is now secured. We know it's solid, and we know there's going to be a hell of a build ahead of us.
Okay, so there we go, another successful session on the 911-ish. I think the biggest achievement though has been just assessing this thing and establishing that it is solid, it is a good base to move forward. It really does sort of help plan this build, knowing that it doesn't have to be a complete sort of explosion of parts everywhere. It doesn't have to be dismantled to the same extent as the Nova, which of course I'm very, very pleased about and relieved about. It is solid. Of course it is still a million miles away from being perfect or anything like that, but it's a strong base for us to build upon. And like I just mentioned, knowing what a project is so important, and I really just want this to be something I can drive in the very near future. Of course, taking it into a million pieces and doing everything perfectly is wonderful, but it's just not something I want to do. It's not something I think this car needs, and that's fine. But what is next? Well, we've got all the floor pan treated and the head section, front suspension, which is excellent. Somewhere along the way, we are going to have to get this up in the air properly, completely strip the underside and the rear section and treat that. But I'm not sure at what stage that'll happen. It sort of just depends on access, but that can happen at any point, which is good. So I think really what's next though is getting the wide body, test fitting it, which will then inform how wide we need things like wheels. Then once the wide body is on, of course, it will need lots of body work, and we can begin the immense amount of body work, cleaning up this tub, cleaning up the whole shell, and sort of slowly move towards having a wide-bodied 911 that is ready for some primer. So I guess that's the next stage. Test fit the wide body, body work, and at some point underside of the car, rear suspension, and all that fun. Then once we know where the wide body is sitting and really what this is going to look like, we can tackle wheels. I need your guys' opinion. To get wheels this massive is seemingly impossible, so I'm going to have some wheels widened. So if you know anybody who can widen alloy wheels, that would be an amazing help. And at the same time as dealing with wheels, we'll deal with front suspension, rear suspension. As I mentioned, a lot of the rear suspension is going to be changed, so a bunch of the front bits. And then we should have a sort of rolling, body-worked, wide-body 911. Then we can deal with paint, then we can deal with interior, then we have a car, and then once I've enjoyed it for a little bit, we can rip the engine out. Again, I just flew through that. That is a huge amount of work, but that is the rough trajectory of what I would like to happen. Outside of the 911, the Nova is still very much going on. We're just dealing with the intake setup. Getting that finished is a lot of work. Obviously we can't run with the massive octopus setup, but it's just very time consuming, and I'm sort of relying on the help of others who are kindly giving me their time. So it's sort of just a process. But the Nova should be back next week, so don't worry, it is coming. And then once we've had another session on the Nova, we'll be back wide bodying this thing, then we'll be back on the Nova, back on the Porsche, back on the Nova, back blah, blah, blah. You get the idea. But anyway, if you enjoyed this episode, and even if you didn't, please do consider liking, sharing, subscribing, commenting, all of that sort of thing. It really does help me out, allows me to keep making episodes on these bizarre oddities every week, and I think you guys like it. I certainly like it. So yeah. Another great way to support the channel is Patreon. I've linked my Patreon down below. Over on the Patreon, behind the scenes access, early access. There you get to see the day-to-day happenings of what's going on in the shed, everything we do to the cars long before they actually enter the channel, a few secret cars, all that fun. Another great way to support the channel is merchandise. Again, I've linked it down below. Any money made from the merchandise just goes into buying parts, keeping the lights on, and all of that good stuff. But regardless, I'm just so grateful that you are all here watching. So until next week, take care, and I will see you then.